We come now to the period of black consciousness. This was launched rather by a church reaction. The Cottesloe consultation, held with the help of the World Council of Churches, in which 8 South African churches and church bodies, including 3 synods of the Dutch Reformed churches, participated. 2 of these synods supported the resolutions. There was a fierce reaction from Dr. Verwoerd, and all 3 synods withdrew from the World Council of Churches. One representative of the Dutch Reformed Church emerged to become the most vigorous campaigner for social justice. Dr. Beyers Naudé, Dominee, moderator of the Synod, member of the Broederbond. What a road to Damascus that was. He launched Pro Veritate, which means for the truth, in 1962, a publication, and became director of the Christian Institute in 1963. His aim at first was to influence white opinion through Bible sharing and prayer groups. He was disillusioned and began to move towards exclusive involvement with black liberation. There were training courses for independent church ministers. In 1966, Bishop Bill Burnett and Beyers Naudé attended a conference on society and church overseas and came back to promote similar conferences in South Africa with the cooperation of the South African Christian Council, as it was then. In 1968, many of the churches got together, and thank God the Catholic was among them this time, to proclaim a very powerful message to the people of South Africa. And out of that came the initiative of Peter Randall, the establishment of a study project on Christianity and apartheid society. This advanced in two sections, 2 periods. The first was an investigation of apartheid in South African social life, including the church aspects, and left little for whites to be proud of, including the white-dominated churches. SPROCAS 2, that study project came to be called SPROCAS. SPROCAS 2 was concerned with the promotion of black community programs. And we are now reaching the stage of a close alliance between the Christian Institute, the South African Christian Council, as it still was, and black consciousness. This movement had come into existence under the leadership of Steve Biko. At one time, he had been a prominent figure in the National Union of South African Students, NUSAS. He had become deeply involved in the University Christian Movement, UCM, which had evolved into an almost exclusively black movement. Steve Biko left NUSAS. He explained that he had to get out with his friends in order to discover his true personality and his true deep emotional feelings and attitudes. He left NUSAS and founded the South African Students' Organization, SASO. The Christian Institute, the South African Council of Churches, as it became, and SASO collaborated in the promotion of black community programs to set in motion a proliferation of black communities of young people all over the country. Black representation in the Christian Institute and the South African Council of Churches was increasing rapidly and giving rise to the spread of black theology among black ministers throughout the country. Black theology would be reflection on the Bible in regard to the sufferings, the limitations, the repression of black people in South Africa. Reflection in the Bible on that repression. Black consciousness was favored by external events, such as the Civil Rights Campaign and the anti-Vietnam War agitation in the United States, the threatened youth rebellion in France in 1968, and the growing success of the liberation forces in Mozambique, Angola, Zimbabwe, and Namibia. To add to the highly charged atmosphere in South Africa in 1970, the World Council's program to combat racism recognized the right of Christians to have recourse to violence to overcome entrenched injustice. That really shook South Africa. And a few months later, voted to give financial aid to liberation movements. That did more than shake South Africa, it rocked us to our heels. Inspired by the Second Vatican Council from 1962 to 65 and criticisms from our black clergy, the Southern African Catholic Bishops' Conference began the process of self-examination in 1972, which resulted in 1976 in a decision to integrate seminaries and to open the schools to pupils of all races. I remember well our conversations with the minister at that time, Pete Kurnoff, yes. He was a very polite and friendly person, and he was trying to play one side against the other, but some of us had been trained in rugby, and we took the gap and went on to open the schools. Now, we did fear that all our schools would be closed and suppressed. Little did we know at the time, we were poor politicians, that the government was more afraid of a movement like this of the Catholic Church than we were of the government, because of the Catholic Church's extensions into America and Germany and France and England and so on.